What's up, chat? Nugi here in 2021.
Wow.
Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, 8s. Happy New Year, Lenape Medicine. Thank you for the Happy New Year wishes. It was insanely difficult to find a color wheel that went from the like hue around the outside and then went closer to, or went towards gray in the middle. So essentially working with saturation. Pretty much every single one of them went from the hue to like white or to black, and then it maybe faded out to white this way, which is great and all, if that's what you're looking for, but it doesn't really coincide with how I think about color in my brain when I'm mixing, because I'll always start with hue and then I'll desaturate it to where it needs to be, and then I'll worry about value. So with this, it makes a lot more sense, at least while I'm explaining it, if it goes from the hue to gray with saturation, and then I can just say, okay, it's here, but I need to make it go up to here, or down, vice versa. So what do I need here? Actually, before I answer that, I should probably know myself. So if we take a look at my reference here, we have like a reddish color here in this flower. We're going to need more of this yellow. We're going to need probably some blue. Some of this red is probably some of this. I'm not actually drawing. Some of this red here. We could probably use the same red. I also need to make this section here significantly darker. Because right now, if we take a look at what's happening, it's very not dark enough, if that makes any sense. So I think I'm going to start with mixing a red. I'm going to block in this area here, this flower, and this section here, and we'll go from there. I also need to work on the rivet. So I think I'll mix the red and the rivet color. So, rivet color. I know for a fact I used burnt umber, and I added some warm yellow to it to make it more like a woody, earthy color. It also lightened it a bit, so then I can go back in with burnt umber, maybe some ultramarine blue. So this is kind of a weird situation because I started with burnt umber first, which is my neutral that's desaturating what's happening here. So if we take a look at the color wheel, I kind of did it backwards, but we essentially started with a warm yellow, which is somewhere in between here. It's not fluid, so it's hard to really gauge exactly where it is. We added burnt umber, which is already a neutral, so it's here. And whenever we add a color, we're pulling our mixture in that direction. So if we added, green, it would pull it in that direction. If we added magenta, we'd pull it in this direction. And we just have to stop, wherever on that line we want it to be, right? So if we started with a warm yellow, we're adding a neutral to desaturate, so we're going this way. And then I just need to worry about value. Now, it's already dark, so it's already like here because it's burnt umber. And so I'm not going to add any white to it, at least for like the main section. But for highlights, I am going to be up somewhere around here. So that's kind of what's going on here. This isn't a great example of what we're doing, but I'm actually going to add a bit more of the warm yellow to it get a slightly lighter woody brown. And then I'm going to add some white for some highlights. We do want this to be pretty light, so I think that's pretty good. And then we're going to work some blue into it for the darker areas, not just because ultramarine blue is a dark color, but also we're going to get some color variation, which is important. Even though this is a small section, you know, it's literally the size of like my fingernail. I think that the more color variation you can have in anything, better. Even if it's super subtle, it's just one of those things that's going to add more interest. If we look back at the 5 principles, aspects, I don't know what you want to call them, of two-dimensional artwork: shape, color, value, line, texture, or SCIVL for short. Color is one of them. Second one. I don't think they're actually in any particular order, but color, you know, that means using the right color, you know, not just matching exactly what you want, but also making the color, you know, convey what you're looking to convey. But also the more variation in that within what you're trying to do is just going to make it even more depth, even more deep, have more depth. But I think Pepper is dying for some screen time. Oh, here's our Pepper. Oh. Say hi to the people. Really, Pepper? You need to put your butt on my head? See, Pepper, do you see your face judging everyone in chat? Anyway, I've done a lot of random talking and no painting, so I'm gonna ditch Pepper here in a second, and we'll get back to it. And we're gonna talk about this reddish color here. So I'm going to ignore this color here because it's essentially an off-white, and I'm going to use this as my basis right here where I just completely covered it up. And that's the color we're going to mix. So we're going to keep that in our brains, and I'm going to explain what I'm going to do to get that color. Now, this is definitely a cool red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my cool red, which is somewhere like here on the color wheel. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of warm red to kind of make it a little less purple, a little more traditional red. And then we're going to be somewhere around here. And obviously I need to desaturate it. And we're going to, the kind of goal color that we're looking for is somewhere around here. So to get to that, we're going to start here with our warm red, or cool red. We're going to add warm red to it, get it here, and then to get it to here, we're going to add the opposite color, which is a slightly blue-green. And that's going to pull it from the red side of the color wheel all the way across, because we're going to be moving towards the color that we're adding. No matter where it is, it's going to move in a straight line towards that color. So we're going to stop once we reach our goal here, and then we're going to decide if we need to adjust the value or not. So I'm going to erase these awful notes here, and I'm just going to essentially do this as like notation. So this is where we start here, a little star, and we're going to add warm red, and then we're going to add green to pull it to where we want to be. So let's see what that looks like. We're going to start with cool red, which is close to purple. Also, this is super oily, I don't know why. That color in general is pretty oily, but it's even more oily than usual, so it's like even difficult to like get it to stick to the glass. But anyway, we're gonna put that down, and as we discussed, we're gonna add some warm red to it, just a little bit, to move it along the outside of the color wheel. We're still working with just hue at this point, and so now it's much more red, less magenta or crimson, whatever you want to call it. It's more of like just a pretty standard cool red. Then we need to add this color here, which is surprisingly difficult to draw with my mouse. But rather than actually mix that color and then add it afterwards, I'm going to just add I'm going to mix a green into it, which you've seen me do before. But I just want to make sure that I'm using more blue than yellow, so we have a bluer green. So we're just going to take a tiny little bit of yellow, and here you can see this instantly desaturating. And now if you're going for a perfect desaturation, you don't want to affect the hue of this at all, then yes, I do recommend trying to find the like perfect opposite. But is there ever really a time when you're going to need to do that? Like, I don't know. For me, I don't know if there's ever a time where I was like, I need this exact color. Maybe there is a case for it. You know, if I'm trying to like patch something. So we have this red here, and the reason why I desaturated it kind of a second time with even more green is because I know that once I add white to this, it's going to look significantly more saturated. In fact, I'm going to do that now. And you can see that if I didn't desaturate it again, add more green to it, that second time, this would be very, very, very saturated. Which, oops, there we go. That's still good. So here we have our desaturated reddish color, and we can add even more white to that. So essentially what we did in that last step was we took the red, which was somewhere around here, and we brought it up to probably somewhere around here, like that. So that's kind of the process. I start working around the outside of the color wheel and then mix the opposite to bring it in, and then I'll adjust the value however it's needed. Now, one thing that I haven't really accounted for or talked about or really explained ever is, what do you do if you want the value to go darker? Because I've said, you don't want to use black. Black is, it's easy to overtake a painting with black, and there's not really any inherent color in it. It can be jarring or lifeless looking. So when you can, I recommend using color. So what can you do in that situation? And the short answer is you can add some ultramarine blue, which is a very dark color. That works well if you're working with like a warm mixture because it's cool and it will not be obviously blue. But let's say you have a blue and you don't want to make it more saturated, you can also add neutrals. In this case, I have burnt umber there, but there are other neutrals that you can use that kind of serve their own purpose. I don't bother with them, but there's also burnt sienna, and raw umber are like the main ones. I don't know if there's others, but those are the four that I'm familiar with. And that's another way where you can make them darker. Two of them, like the burnt variations of umber and sienna, are better because they're burnt they're darker. Whereas the raw ones are lighter. Raw umber in some cases could make it darker, but it's more of like a greenish color. And raw sienna is essentially like a yellow ochre, so it's not going to do what you want if you want to take your value down towards black.